This is LS, and you're on Thorin's YouTube channel, so cut the Western shit.
Right, this is episode 52 of Narrative Wake, which makes me realise when a theme or a style has become played out is when you actually think of the same idea twice and then remember you've thought of the same idea twice and then actually just like look down on yourself, because obviously I can't have thought of this on this show because it's only now got to episode 52. But I know that there must have been another show I did that got to episode 52 because I made some sort of shit joke about like 52 card pickup, that game where you just smash the cards onto the floor and then tell the person to pick it up, you know, like one of the lamest little tricks of all time. But whatever, we started with the concept, still got a laugh, right? So for this episode, that's why I still do this show, for anyone who wonders, by the way. I know everyone, I don't know why people are like this, right? There hasn't even been much of a gap between the episodes. Like, we had a bit of a gap because it's the off season, and also because half the fuckers don't watch the episodes if they're not about specifically like right now in time, you know. And anyone who's a TSM fan's like, why are you talking about the past? Don't ever mention the past. Like, yeah, sorry, I didn't realise I didn't have permission to talk about things that happened all of
There's not much of a future to talk about in that case either, so...
Exactly. I mean, the ultimate irony of a TSM fan being like, why are you dwelling on the past? It's like, are you for real? We have to go into the past to find what you want to happen, mate. Anyway, the point I was going to make was, yeah, we're still doing the show. Like, on this show, you know, we bring on guests who are very knowledgeable. We try and put in front of them scenarios. We let them talk about the draft. We talk about like the way the game played out. They can argue on the minutiae of how something played out. On the other show, I just basically tell Loco he's a moron in about 50 different ways. And then he just goes like, but you're old and you never were even pro. And then I just go like, that doesn't even work as banter though, does it? Like, that's just shit, isn't it? Like, so anyway, that's, by the way, just take that little clip there. That's like a short summary of all those episodes in case you like, that's like the omnibus edition in case you couldn't catch up with Hollyoaks this week. Like, there you go. That's all that happened this week. And then just different guests sit and awkwardly watch me flame Loco and go, shit, I hope he doesn't do that to me. But I don't, because I'm actually fairly nice to most of them. Now, on this episode, we've got veteran, seen him many times before. Was working with H2K before, obviously RIP, gone too soon, depending on who you ask, of course. But we've got Croissant in the bottom left corner, working with OpTic, RIP, gone too soon. No, just a joke, of course. Still there, still kicking. Listen, they're not totally gone. They're just like, they're sort of in the coma and the machine is still on. So like right now, no one knows yet whether they come out and it's fine or whether they just come in and go, yeah, we're going to have to turn it off now. I'm sorry. If you'd like to say your last words to them. And then they just shut off the respirator or whatever it is. So obviously with Kelsey taking her new job as the 100 Thieves head coach of the academy squad, sentence you didn't really ever expect to have to say without sarcasm involved. A real thing. That's legit. I wasn't even a joke, as I just mentioned. Anyone who hasn't been keeping up with the news is going like, for real though? Like, yeah, for real. So anyway, since that's a real thing, we're going to completely shill and pretend like we all care about Academy in the National Leagues now. And we're going to talk, even though we've never addressed them once on any episode ever, we're going to now address them as a legit thing. Talk about the future and speculate what might happen. So let's see if we can manage to do it.
Ironically, I pitched this show topic like well before I was even talking to 100 Thieves. So there's that.
See, I didn't know that. I just assumed that you like, you know, it was like hand in hand and you were just being secretive, you know, and you didn't want to let anything out there. You know,
it's just what good timing when we finally recorded. There you go.
Exactly. So. No, you are known to play your cards very close to your chest, as opposed to Veteran, who basically does play 52 card pickup with his cards. Like, he just throws all his opinions out there, just sees what lets them fall where they may, and then everyone else will have to be the judge of that card trick. So let's start with this premise, okay? For people who only know about the academies in the context of, oh, that used to be Challenger, didn't it? Like, what wasn't that just Challenger, but now it's just its own competition? Like, the premise everyone has been sold on Academy and National Leagues, etc., is to like grow domestic talent, is to develop scenes outside of LCS. You know, basically what they told us exactly what Challenger was for, but it almost never worked for that. So they've rebooted that whole concept, you know, and it's like starting now. So with the premise itself, I want to actually talk as an abstract first before we get into like specific teams and countries and how each of the different regions might be different and the ecosystems, etc. As a premise, does the setup that they have seem like it can fulfill upon that kind of the potential of we can develop talent and you can have an extra place to try people out, and it can be a way, for example, to have more than just the LCS in your region or whatever particular region you're in? Does it work as that premise? Do you buy that that angle works?
In Europe, it's unnecessary, so I'm just going to let these two talk about the ramifications in North America, because it's always seemed far more necessary for me in North America.
I think the Challenger Series sort of became the general consensus is the Challenger Series sort of became okay, we don't really care, we're just trying to play for the high money cash out. Like the biggest prize that you can get in any league is the value of an LCS spot, right? You can play for that and then sell it. So that was kind of the approach that a lot of teams were taking. This academy separation, you can't necessarily qualify anymore, sort of became way more relevant in terms of building talent. And I also think it's pretty relevant that they made the import restrictions stricter, because there's nothing that North Americans hate more than their own players. So I think that it is kind of necessary. There are things that can be changed to make it better, but I do think that it's a good idea and a good starting point.
Yeah. You know the sick thing, by the way, just as a side topic on that, like when you said that as obviously it's like a sort of snarky remark, like it is just totally true, because first of all, as you can see, everyone who's getting residency is just getting to stay as well, and they're just building teams around them. And also, we all know that throughout all of history, NA fans have tried to claim Bjergsen as their own, even though the same moron fan would never claim that like Rookie is a Chinese player. And by the way, China's probably the first region that'll try this. As soon as they make a team that is like Rookie, the Shy, like, you know, like a whole bunch of people that are all Korean and they have 4 or 5 Koreans, just wait for the crying that all the fans will do on Reddit, even though the same people are fine with TSM doing the same shit themselves in NA. So anyway, you triggered me there. It was just a side tangent. As you alluded to, Kelsey, that basically is the main problem, right? Is that because people just were trying to sell spots, they didn't even use Challenger for the premise of what it was for, because it wasn't developing talent, because why would you develop talent when it might not get into LCS and let you get that $1 million? Instead, just get some washed up pros who aren't actually quite at LCS level or didn't get on a team, boost them into a spot, and then you were never going to use that guy anyway because you sell the spot, and then someone else's problem, you know, some moron who's bought, I don't know, Dignitas or something has to figure out that guy's not actually any good anymore. So what is your thought on this, Croissant? Because obviously you're someone who, I don't know how much you followed the academy scene, etc. You know some of the players though, right? So what do you think on this angle? Because as Veteran said, it does seem like NA is the region they really had to implement this for, and that they desperately want it to work for, so we can actually get some LCS quality NA players.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is a necessity for North America to develop this native talent, but as a lot of teams are starting to use grandfathered in imports, and people are getting green cards and all these things, people are wondering whether that's even necessary anymore. But the main thing I would want to highlight is, yes, the Challenger Series, before this reboot, before this like rewrapping of what is now Academy, was mainly the main objective for teams and investors was a cash out. And the premise of the new Academy is, as you said, the development of new talent. But while I'm pretty sure that every single team, I can't speak for all 10 teams, but like I've spoken to like team owners, like all the managers, everyone believes in this idea or believes in the value of North American talent. But it's about like when people don't see any returns and any results, which a lot of teams did not see in 2018, there's no cash out opportunity. And also, like, even if you get first place in the Academy, if your tier of talent, even if you have the best AD carry in North America in your Academy team, if they're sitting behind Bang or they're sitting behind Double Lift, they will never get a chance to play, and that talent can't be utilized. And I mean, the biggest thing for Academy is how to, like, LCS is already struggling to monetize itself, already struggling to, not necessarily struggling. Like we're currently on an uptick for League of Legends interest and like viewership and all that. But like, how can you get people to watch LCS and then also Academy? So really, it's just for the teams themselves to have their players exist in a certain environment, perhaps have like in-house scrims and play against the main team and develop talent that way. But it's hard to see teams dropping like $500,000 a year and being like, why don't we just put that into buying like a very proven talent from Korea or from Europe, etc.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, so let's do some of that. And so, okay, well, on the angle that you said of like developing the NA talent, etc., the bizarre thing about that, obviously, is that from day one of Challenger existing, people could have done what people like Steve Arnasek claimed they needed franchising to do, which is you could have just had your real Team Liquid team, or Curse back then, and then you could have had your Challenger team, and you could have purposely only recruited NA people to the Challenger team. You could have had them like scrim the main team. You could have had them like play in Challenger. If they make it, then you figure out if any of them are talent and sell them for money, or you actually take a player into your own team, since you will inevitably need NA players in the future. It's just that no one did that, because even though they all claimed they wanted to, they were all so short-sighted. They all tried to take the short-term gain on every angle. Like, they never just tried the proof of concept. And the other angle on that is, as you say about doing internal scrims, that's the other one that just blew my mind from day one. It's like, this is something like when people used to complain about like, oh, Koreans have like sister teams like they did back in the day, you know, where you can just practice against them. I always used to say, first of all, some of you have a Challenger team, and even then you don't waste your time, I'm doing air quotes now, practicing them, because you're so stupid you don't understand the concept. And even worse, I'll bet some of these teams are so dumb they'd just be like try-harding against their own Challenger team, wrecking them, not even doing any like actual practice, and just going, see, why are we playing them, coach? As though like in Korea, you know, the subs that they play with are any good in the in-house scrim. So obviously these premises could exist. How do we actually implement them though? Because I think both those aspects are clearly obviously very good things if you can do them. If you can develop talent, if you can internally scrim, there are clear benefits that have been proven by other regions, other teams, other esports even. So how does Academy and do the National League systems actually allow you to do this now, do you think?
I think it really depends. So organizations become more interested in building North American players when they realize how expensive some of these Korean imports are becoming because of the naturalization process. Like with the naturalization process, a lot of Korean imports actually have increased salaries, right? Because they are no longer considered they're no longer considered imports. They no longer take an import slot, so their perceived value by these organizations goes up. Not necessarily because that's what they're actually valued at, and not necessarily because they're actually the best player in their role in NA LCS, now LCS, I guess. But not necessarily because of that, but because that's generally like the perceived role. And so other players coming from Korea will naturally talk to this guy and be like, why isn't my salary that, you know? And then it ends up being like a bit of a game like that. So if you have a way of fostering NA talents, you know, that becomes more attractive because you don't necessarily have to compete for like the guy who just won Worlds that everyone is going to be trying to recruit, right? You don't have to compete for that player gap. So if you can market to orgs that way, like this is going to be a beneficial thing for you from this perspective, then that's good. Otherwise, you have to sort of incentivize, I think, main team players and academy players to care a little bit more about the opposing player's development, which is difficult. Yes. Like there are things that you can do, obviously, but they will see this as like, okay, this is competition for my role, or maybe the main team guy will think, well, this guy, yeah. The main team guy will think like, this guy isn't even good. Why should I waste my time? Like that kind of thing. But if you can say, okay, well, if like the mid laner of a main team goes to the coach and is like, I want to kind of practice this matchup a bit more or something, the coach says, okay, don't talk to me, talk to like the academy player. Then that's like a good start for incentives or something like that. Okay.
Right, Veteran, as someone who made the now obviously memed on infamous quote that like you'd rather have like 5 rookies that you could mold into a team rather than like, I think you even said Bjergsen, like you even sure. dared to invoke the triggered name, obviously. So you set the stakes high for that. You must have a strong opinion on this, the idea of trying to develop rookies, right?
Yeah, I mean the in a post-relegation, post-franchising era, the big problem that you're going to run into is that whereas now the previous risk with dumping everything in on these high brand, high value players was that if it doesn't work out, you've lost your spot and you've lost your money. And the Challenger Series, as it was in a relegation era, was a very good check to this to ensure that actual rookie talent would always come in. Nowadays, there's absolutely no risk in doing what, for example, NIP did with dumping 12k for Profit and dumping another 12k for Nagne. They couldn't get relegated anymore, even if they were bottom. And Reddit forgot in a month, even though he was relegated in Europe, that Nagne was not good at all on that team, and in fact got beaten out by Cajal in our series. But everybody is willing to accept that Cajal was not a good mid laner, for example. Nowadays, there is absolutely no reason not to go for the stronger branded player. Because even if that doesn't work out, you dump your money on Froggen, you dump your money on Gorilla, you dump your money on whoever. Everyone will agree that it's a good move from a competitive sense just because these guys already have a standing. And you can be as intelligent as you want about the ceiling of certain rookie players, but you're not going to be able to convince everybody on Reddit, so it will always snowball in favor of the better branded player. And now there's absolutely no risk in making that choice perpetually and keeping a potentially higher ceiling support player in your academy who will never give you more brand awareness. One big thing about Europeans and Koreans as well is that they actually allow these organizations to get into the European and Korean markets as well. So like Bang is probably being paid a large amount, and I won't ask Kelsey to like leak how much or anything, but I imagine he's being paid a large amount. I actually think he is genuinely worth that amount. It gives 100 feeds a really good footing that they already got from Sunday, allows them to snowball that Sunday footing into the Bang footing. Bang's already explicitly said that he wants to stream, he wants to learn English. Why on earth wouldn't they do this? And why, as Croissant said, if they're looking at Bang and they're looking at another AD carry player on the 100 Feeds Academy roster, why wouldn't they keep Bang at all costs? Even if they're doing bad, they're not going to lose their spot anymore, but they will lose branding if they risk it all in the next ADC play and it doesn't work out. And no org owner, no org manager is able to tell the ceiling of a rookie player. And why would they want to listen to that in the first place? This is the thing that Challenger Series was able to keep in check, and relegation was able to keep in check. And I think this is going to be the biggest barrier. So
you actually think it kind of goes the opposite to the premise then, actually, which is like, yeah, in theory you can develop the players in the academy. Like now you don't have to just fill that with old washed up players. But as you say, it also means, if anything, you should go for the big name on the main team, because worst case scenario is on your team, but you can always put another guy in and you don't kind of lose anything from it, right? Many
players didn't want to play with Jizuki for years. Jizuki was really high up on European Challenger for years, and loads of people knew he was a talent, but you couldn't get players to agree to work with him. The moment that you could find a couple of other rookie players who would agree to work with Jizuki, and also players of a similar mindset, they powered through Challenger Series, they qualified for LCS, they went to Worlds immediately. But now, if you have a player like Jizuki who doesn't have a brand whatsoever, and that other players are not giga high on, because honestly, it takes a lot of time for players to warm up. It's not like players were begging for caps for years beforehand. That's not the case at all. Why would you take the risk on a player like Jizuki, on a player like Mini Trupax, when you could be recycling, for example, Freeze again? Not to disparage Freeze, but you have way more of an incentive to take a veteran player from a brand perspective, from an org perspective, especially now the game has turned into ROI. Players used to be able to threaten you with, if we don't get this, you will not be able to keep your slot. All power has now been taken away from the players in this regard. There's no real reason to look in at rookies. And I think the really good thing about the National League system that's being developed in Europe in this regard is that these guys will still be able to maintain a career in League of Legends. There's no equivalent system like that in North America, even with Academy. Academy opens up an extra 10 slots per role for these players, but there's far more than that in Europe. So I'm not too worried about European rookie talent. You're just going to have to find more coaches and more analysts who are willing to say to the org owners and the org managers, no, trust me, this guy is worth it. You don't have to import whoever it is that you want to import.
This is why I also think like one of the big things is like talking in branding terms and everything like this is to help like players on academy teams or whatever else with like their brand, with their outward facing goal, and to have sort of like similar branding requirements of the academy players to the main team, and then see if they can build it from there. Because a lot of these guys, like, people will stream and they will just get like following from having an entertaining personality, not being like the best of the game, and then suddenly that guy's value goes up and he can be on like a comparable level. I also think that like something that NA can do, and this is something that you guys brought up, is like, what is the incentive to even watch NA Academy? Well, there's a lot of stuff that can be done to make the viewer experience better, just like on a cosmetic level, even where it's like they only stream some of the games anyway. But why doesn't Riot, again, like, this is the eternal question, open stuff up for like amateur casters to take some of the games and to broadcast them and stuff like this? Maybe you get like a really entertaining up and coming amateur caster who makes people just like want to watch this league because this guy is so entertaining, and then he can get picked up by Riot as well, and Riot have like fostered brands in multiple kind of different dimensions just by sort of like opening up the VODs for people to download and cast, you know? So
the way it works, at least in Summer Split, I know for OpTic's games, what was we had two people from OpTic. I guess they were in Dallas streaming the games and casting them, and a lot of other teams like FlyQuest, TL did streams inside their own facility. I don't know if that would make the viewing experience better for like the average viewer, because while you might find a talent like Captain Flowers, that talent takes time to develop. And it's really unlikely that any amateur caster would like even come close to rivaling like the casting talent that Riot currently employs. So I think that would be detrimental to like the branding of the individual academy players or just the academy teams, wouldn't it?
I don't honestly think so, because honestly, Riot doesn't have like there isn't an amateur casting scene, period. But you know, you could develop it along the way, and then this guy brands develops at the same time as like some of these academy players have like 1K followers. Like that guy also maybe has like 2K followers. Maybe he gets like a little bit better at casting over time, and then the player gets a little bit better at playing over time, and then you have like these two brands developing at once. Like the guy doesn't have to start out great, but once you're at a point where, you know, no one is casting LPL right now. Like we have two casters at the LPL, like Raz and Clement. Like there are places for people to have jobs, and the amateur talent isn't necessarily at a point where everyone like immediately comes to mind and is like, that guy should go to China, right? So like there definitely is space for that to happen, and there's definitely, like you mentioned Captain Flowers. That guy was basically not considered anyone. He just starts casting streams, right? And then people think like, oh my God, this guy is really entertaining. There are definitely people like that out there. They just kind of need some sort of resources or a shove in the right direction, and these kinds of people will emerge. I don't necessarily think that having all the streams be in-house content is the best solution, but you can do stuff like that, right? Like if you have these big brands like people coming in from other esports and making, like, you could even have, if OpTic really wanted to invest in this, or any org really wanted to invest in this, you could have like guys from COD teams or something come on and saying like, I know zero about League of Legends, but this game is entertaining and stuff like this. And then you up a little bit of entertainment value from like the existing brands that OpTic or 100 Thieves or whatever even has, right? So there are a lot of ways to just kind of do this. Like you can do in-house content, you can have like amateur casters. I think there are a lot of ways to kind of market the academy stuff a little bit better, and then get a little bit more attention for these players. So
I think something that's really telling on this regard, if we're talking about like the entertainment aspects of academy leagues and of the regional leagues and stuff like this, is that the most entertaining roles to watch have always been mid and AD carry. It's much harder to see on an obvious level why you should hype up a support player or a jungle player or even a top laner in a lot of scenarios, just because of the dynamics of how mid and ADC always play out to a viewer. And as a result, it's been much easier in the last few years for European mids and European AD carries to show that it is worth gambling on the European AD carry in the European mid lane talent pool. But now I feel like it's being shut off to really, unfortunately, at a point where a lot of young support players in Europe, for example, that have looked really strong, that have looked really good and did have the opportunity to prove themselves this year, aren't going to be able to brute force their way into the LCS. Like that, they would have been able to do that if we rewind the clock back 2 years. And I'm really glad that Jizuki was able to go straight to Worlds. I'm really glad that Mini Truepax was able to go straight to Worlds, because teams are still willing to try to grab the next caps because of how heavily that snowballed from every perspective, you know? know, and people are more willing to try to grab the next handsome or even the next upset. But it was always going to be more difficult to really capture the audience's attention, support, and a jungle player. And now I feel like the chance is being lost, and it's going to be much harder for these players to make a comeback.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask a little bit, unless you want to take this in a different direction, Thorin. Okay. I wanted to ask about why Jizuke people weren't interested in playing with him, because, I mean, just taking a look at, again, this past split for Academy, or even further back, Zazal got a lot of hype from casters when he was in Challenger, has been hyped up as like support talent for a long time, and he got his chance through with C9. Yeah. And then for CLG, like, people were basically like, I want to play with Wiggly. Players on other teams, players on CLG, and that is why he's got his shot, and he's coming in as like one of like 3 rookies in NALCS. You also have Viper, who's a top laner. You have you have Vulcan, who's on CG.
Wiggly has a brand, though. Like, Wiggly's been propped up by LS, for example. Like, Wiggly actually is very well known, and that does matter to a lot of these people. If they've been told that somebody is good by everyone, then they're more willing to believe that. But for a player like Jizuki, who never got propped up by any big streamer, never got propped up by any big brand before, it was as simple as, this guy is a random and he thinks he can talk to me like this in solo queue. I don't think he's good to work with. I don't want to work with him. People are legitimately like that, because we're dealing with kids here, and there aren't very many coaches and managers and owners who are confident enough in their ability to identify skill to outright say for sure, no, I know something you don't, we should be taking a risk on this guy. And that's why it took so long for Jizuki to find the team that he rightfully deserved to power on through.
Sure, but we're talking about other players and their willingness to like see a new talent and be like, I want to work with Jizuki, right? And for Wiggly, like, being propped up by LS is definitely not like the most immediate thing. Like PoE or Stixxay aren't going to look at LS's recommendation and be like, yes, I want to play with Wiggly. It's that they straight up identified, like, okay, this is how Wiggly plays in scrims, or this is how he's been playing in Academy. Like, players all pay attention to that. Maybe not all of them, like, especially the bigger stars like Doublelift, but like, I know that everyone on the main team for OpTic would watch Academy games now and then, and they like see certain stand-up, learn a thing or two from the talent pool there. But yeah, I'm not really certain that it's just because of like the brand, because even with Wiggly support from LS, he still only had like 3,000 Twitter followers. Vulcan is getting his shot on CG.
I would guess it's on a case-by-case basis too. Like, if maybe this guy's just the rare person who doesn't talk shit and actually is a nice guy and therefore has befriended people. Because I can tell you, it's still to this day a famous concept.
To be one of the only people who has been shouted out on Twitter.
It's still to this day a concept that exists in CSGO, for example, that if someone comes up and they actually show talent when they're sort of like a semi-pro, the problem is, first of all, just because this is what competitive people are like, odds are they're going to talk shit to the pro that they don't think is good anymore, who they think is washed up, and in doing so, unwittingly, like get a terrible rep for themselves, because that pro's going to go and tell his friends and his team, oh, fuck that guy, he was talking shit to me, he's and then also in CSGO or whatever, they're going to think, oh, he probably just cheats, or, it's like they come up with every, like, excuse in their brain until basically the person proves, like, usually on LAN, like, they're actually good, and then they just, funnily enough, go 180, and then they're like, oh, now I will play with him. Yes, he is a good player now. So it's like, I've always seen this resistance like that. It's because for some bizarre reason, when people first encounter someone that could be good, they're always insanely skeptical, which is bizarre, because you would think, veteran, like as you were saying, especially actually if you're a pro player, you should want to look for the next Caps type dude in the hopes that you could get him into your team.
But here's the thing, everyone believes they are the next Caps type dude, so why do they need this guy? That's the thing in Europe. That's the thing with European attitude, that is always going to be a semi-barrier to these, but that attitude is also why these players have always been able to show up anyway when there was a relegation and promotion system in place, because they are willing to make themselves this good because they believe that is almost their birthright in a way. That's a level of confidence that I know doesn't like come out in America a lot, so I don't know exactly how the community there reacts, but the only time that I've seen rookies genuinely being propped on a pedestal is with the only coach who was willing to say to his ownership, to his management, no, I do see something in the ceiling of these players that you don't, and that was Reapert. over in Cloud9. And this is why I've given him so much praise, because I believe that's a gamble that other coaches should be confident in taking. It's a gamble that has completely paid off as well. Cloud9's brand is no longer tied intrinsically to Sneaky and Jensen as players. Now that they have shown that it is Cloud9 that is getting the victories and Cloud9 decision making that gets them, and not necessarily these star power players. They could do it with Golden Glue versus Bjergsen, for fuck's sake. And that was the MVP decision, coaching decision of North America, in my opinion, last year.
I think it has something to do with. I'm not entirely sure why because I mostly talk to European players, so I haven't talked to NA players as much about this kind of thing, but there is definitely this perception that, like, we promised. I've heard some coaches say things like, we've promised that we aren't going to take a risk on a rookie this year. We're going to make sure we have like a roster of all veterans. There's this like definite preference that if this guy has been in LCS before, that even if I'm like, or I guess LEC, whatever, even if I'm a rookie player, I'd rather work with that guy than someone who's up and coming, who might be good. Again, like, they probably will look down on this guy a little bit because he hasn't had that experience. There's no like visible evidence that he could possibly be better. Like, there are a lot of players like Gilius on that episode of Listen Loco that would say stuff like, you know, I am legit the best player in my role. Like, I don't really care what the results are or anything like this. So there could exactly be. I think that mentality probably does have something to do with it, but the other thing is I don't necessarily know what the conversation with the OpTic guys was or anything, but like, were people saying that they'd rather play with Wiggly over an import, for example? Because that would be good, and I would be like really excited to hear something like that.
That was addressed to you, Croissant. The guy who worked with Sorry, I was thinking.
I think about Wiggly's relationship with Rainover for 2018, right? And I think Tony has talked about this on interviews in the past. I'm not sure exactly to what extent, but basically they had problems with Rainover, like being able to. He would have very good early game plans, but execution at certain parts of the game, and his ability to do 2v2 with Darshan or do 2v2 with Huhi. And what ended up happening was, like, Wiggly was constantly, he had a pretty good relationship with Rainover. I think he learned a lot, and because Rainover has such a wealth of experience, but Wiggly is not the type of person to, very few players would trash their counterpart and say, like, I am like straight up better than Rainover, but in his mind, Wiggly's probably thinking, like, I deserve a chance to at least prove that sure. I can help CLG succeed if they're falling like this flat right now in Summer Split. But the main team decided, whether through coaching staff or whether through a group decision that was reached by the players, that they would play with Rainover and try to fix these problems, right? Because just swapping in rookie talent, fresh, like getting a honeymoon period, wasn't really what they wanted. But as we all know, Wiggly got subbed in towards the end of the split, and even when CLG didn't have any anything to really play for as far as playoffs or gauntlet, and Wiggly had a strong performance, which is why going into the next split, people are like, yeah, I would like to play with Wiggly over like a Korean import, maybe like Lyra or something, etc. I don't think there were specific names passed around, but I'm sure that someone would rather play with Peanut still than Wiggly. If you're building a roster and you're talking to Cody-san, or you're talking to like someone who is still a free agent and is like, I want to join a team, but who do you have on board? Like, ultimately, you have to consider that, like, let's say only a certain number of rookies have been given chances in the LCS, but only 25% of them have had any sort of like decent, have had any success as soon as they hit the ground running. Whereas, yes, like, you don't want to spend a lot of your time in Spring Split competing in LCS trying to teach a rookie player a lot of the things that you already know. You want to be able to work on other things and like creative team synergy. So I think most players would still choose a veteran, but yeah, like if you have a star talent, like someone who could be the next Caps, then players, it's most players haven't seen enough game footage to be able to make that kind of call, right? They can't say, this is the player that I was really impressed by.
Okay.
Unless they like actually laned against that person in solo queue, in which case they'd be taking your job, right? So yeah, like can a mid laner identify what a good rookie top laner looks like? I don't really know, and it's all about like how much does a player integrate themselves into rookie development. It's not really their priority; they're focused on themselves. But if they have good relationships with their coaches, if they're veterans who have seen like who have played with people older than them, younger than them, and they just have like a sense for who they want to play with, then those players will naturally be more vocal about who they see potential in and who they want to take a risk on. So,
and that's probably the deciding factor with Wiggly, is that like he has already sort of proven himself, right? Because he's been in theoretically LCS scrims. He's been like a player who's had to work, because he's been in the scene for ages. Like I've seen him play and heard his name and stuff like this. And so it's like he had to work really hard to get to a point where he was acknowledged as on an LCS level. And I do think that will be more difficult, because like the gap between partly, and I think this is mostly down to the infrastructural development, because the infrastructural development in Europe is good. Like you have a lot of opportunities for these guys to learn team play, to learn how to like work on a bunch of these different concepts, like before they make an LEC debut. And I think that's part of why we see like if a rookie is hyped in Europe, chances are he's not going to fail that much. Whereas in LCS, that's slightly less true. So.
Okay.
Sorry, can you repeat that last part? If they're a rookie in Europe, they're not as likely to fail. But
like if they're a rookie who's been hyped or who's been talked up a bit, like people were already talking about like a lot of the rookies that did really well, then they're less likely to fail. Whereas if like you have a player who's rookie who's joining LCS because I think he's had less experience generally than a lot of the European players, like playing on any kind of competitive team or any kind of a competitive environment, like there is a higher chance for him to fail. And I think like players and teams and the viewing public react to this. Like I made a video last year, which was a lot of people were saying that Cloud9 downgraded, and I was really high on Licorice. But like, meanwhile, you had a lot of people who were like super excited that upset was coming to ULCS. So that kind of contrast happens a lot.
Yeah. And I would say that real quick, just like the thing that is the reason for what Kelsey and Veteran have talked about is you only gain confidence through experience, and the harder the experience that you're successful in, the more confidence you get. And like that's just, there's so many more opportunities for that in Europe, as you guys have talked about. And I think that really highlights the difference between North American and European academy or national leagues.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I want to say the problem there is that now there are less opportunities to get this experience unless teams are willing to take a risk on you that they're no longer incentivized to take a risk on.
Okay. Just before we leave this topic, is it actually common for teams who have the academy team to actually do internal scrims, to actually have the main team scrim against the academy team?
No, I would say it's not that common, because scrims can be very one-sided between the two teams. Some teams have like a more parity, like, I mean, Cloud9 perhaps. But yeah, as far as I know, very few teams would actually have in-house scrims against their academy more than like on like a frequent basis. At least they might try it, but then the main team players would say like, this is not worth my time, or this is like not useful.
Yeah.
And I know teams that wouldn't even allow their academy teams to watch their main team play.
Yeah,
that's like some sort of mad thing where, like, back in India, when they had the caste system, there was like the lowest caste. If they heard the highest caste speaking like the fucking religious scriptures, they used to get like oil poured in their ears, so they were like deafened or something. Like, what the fuck is that? You're not even allowed to watch them scrim.
I would actually be.
The rationale for it is that like these main teams might have strats that they don't want their academy team to be like trying out in solo queue. You know, like a lot of things have been revealed in the past by an academy player playing something in solo queue, like the funnel strats, and being like, okay, their academy team has invested this much time. They must have talked about it with the main team, blah, yada, yada, yada. So
And now everyone listening is thinking that's a really good rationale. And you're right. In the way that everything is set up, it is a really good rationale to not share things with your academy team. It is a really good thing you're incentivized to do. That's why my issues with the system as it is.
Okay. What about then the other angle, which is something that I know, like Asian teams, for example, I've always thought way ahead on, which is that their way of developing players was actually to have them play some of the scrims. Like, obviously, SK Telecom's a great example, you know, like you let the guy play like 1 out of the 5 scrims or something, or you let him play a specific opponent that you think will be a good challenge. Do they do that with any of the academy teams or teams on that level or challenger type teams?
It depends. Like, there is a drastically varying, like, you go anywhere from the C9 philosophy to like the teams that don't have any sort of contact whatsoever. One of the big questions when I was interviewing players for 100T Academy was like, they asked things like, so how much contact do I get with this guy? Like, it's definitely not the norm. So yeah, I think that's like, there are going to be a lot of opportunities in some teams for players to come up from academy and just play some of the scrims in the LCS. There will be some teams that like have a dedicated block for their academy team, but like it varies drastically. Like, it does happen as you suggested, but it also doesn't. So there's that.
Okay.
One thing is that it doesn't matter so much for the academy or challenger players in the eastern regions because they all still have relegation, and that includes China. China is still adding teams via promotion relegation system, and
they don't have relegation anymore.
They have promotion though, right?
They have promotion. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good to clarify. We also want to clarify this because I kept seeing comments that, well, China is franchise, so how do you explain that rookies keep getting up there? But yeah, they do still have a system by which rookie talent that have not had shared experience in scrims that they really have to have now, but orgs are disincentivized against giving them, can still, you know, prove the way that Jizuki and Mini Truplex did last year that they deserve to be up there with the best.
Plus, to be fair, in China, they always did have like 10 fucking player rosters and like just put people in for one of the 58 games you play anyway. Like, you know, when you play some shit.
They still maxed out import slots though.
Sure.
And
you guys have seen that Reddit post?
What Reddit post?
Come on, enlighten us.
The Reddit post about Chinese scouting grounds where they had like 5,080 carries.
Really?
Yeah. They've been doing like scouting grounds type stuff like years before anyone else. It was like really funny to watch the first one because it was like everyone was bidding over 180C. It was really hilarious. So
your mic isn't that loud, by the way, Croissant.
Oh, okay. How's it now?
Yeah, that's a bit better. I don't know why that is. Okay.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like a lot of teams like EDG kind of follow the same thing TSM does, which is like they have their separate scouting grounds and then like their separate sort of academy recruitment thing. And they have just like, there's just probably a stronghold of players that they randomly employ somewhere far away from their gaming house. So.
You know, by the way, when they actually announced that thing that like TSM was going to do their own internal scouting grounds or whatever, because we made that like suggestion on that episode where it was like me, Monty, and Loco Doka where we were like reminiscing over why TSM was shit at Worlds and like, you know, Loco were like trying to be an apologist for it or whatever. Because we did that, Loco was like, do you think it's because we referenced it? And I even just said to him like, dude, if it is, then all hope is lost. Like, if the only ideas for developing fucking North America as a continent is me dragging Monty's fucking corpse out of the ground and just randomly giving you an offhand comment that you can take, like, that surely is not where people are just sat with like a notepad, like, what next? What else did he say? Like, come on, there's got to be more than this, boys. Get some ingenuity for fuck's sake. Okay, here's the question then, Veteran. I'll ask it as naively as possible because obviously there's going to be a lot of NA fans who don't follow Europe at all.
Sure.
What is the difference between Masters and the European leagues and Academy and Challenger? That's what the naive question would be, right?
So you're asking for Europe specifically, what's the difference between Academy and the European regional leagues? They wanted it to be the same as like the North American system where there was a separate Academy league, but now they have leaned instead towards just directly integrating secondary teams for LEC teams into the national leagues themselves, which is absolutely the right call. And therefore you're going to see like Misfits second team in one of the regions. Just realized that they haven't actually announced which one yet. You're going to see Fanatics and Excels in the UK, for example. G2 are going home to Spain. You're going to see these teams in these leagues. That's going to give these leagues far more like in the same manner which Origin's inclusion the EU Masters gave it far more viewership. You're going to get far more viewership on, for example, the UK League, which only like 100 or so people were ever watching every time I tuned into it. And I think that's really good for those leagues, but it's also really good that the EU Masters and the sanctity of what the EU Masters is doesn't get changed whatsoever for it. I think it's a really strong tournament that really allows a lot of players to showcase their stuff. And it also has a really good cash prize, to be honest, relative to what these guys' salaries are. So it's really nice that you can have a fully viable career if you're not in the LEC, but you are still a strong top-level solo queue player who's Masters Plus. Like you absolutely do have a viable career path in Europe, and now people will be watching you, and people hopefully will get hyped for you. And Spanish people get really hyped about whoever's doing well in Spanish League, for example. So that's immediately like 5,000 or so Twitch followers that you can start like shoving between all of you guys. Poland, for example, the people literally just speak in Polish, even if they're Yankos, for example, because of how rabid the fans are. Like you can actually build up a brand, which is really necessary now. Like I do a lot of coaching in off season with high challenger players. It's a sad fact of life that I am having to tell them that one thing that they're going to have to do to get recognized is they have to start streaming and they have to start taking it seriously. But you have a lot more opportunities to do that in Europe because of how nationalistic some of the fan bases are. And this will only aid for that.
I think, yeah, that's another really good point, is to like how much more feasible it is to have like a really nice sort of secondary system in Europe. Is just that like Spanish people care that there are teams specifically playing in Spain, right? Specifically playing in Spain, like under the Spanish league, they have like Spanish specific sponsorships that they can have and grow up and stuff like this. It's not like we have like, we don't, first of all, we don't have the population for this, but it's not like we have like a Colorado league or a Texas league or anything like on that scale where we could have like that kind of pride building up and allowing people to have like that sort of localization of brands. It's just like not feasible. So
it makes you think if some aspiring pro players should be catering to the Deep South or specifically.
Start learning an accent and wear a cowboy hat or some shit and Spurs. What are you on about?
On stage, some biscuits, you know, like the SOAS equivalent. Yeah.
I swear I did see, like, not at the end of this year, but at the end of last year, I did see Riot were advertising some sort of interstate league. It wasn't necessarily collegiate, but they were trying to do like a state v state thing. Do you two know if anything actually came out of that, or? Well,
I do know that one big venture that's happening right now is high school leagues, but I have no idea what will come out of that. There was like quite a bit of investment in there. It's called Play Versus, and they're trying to start like these clubs across the nation in like Texas, etc. But yeah, no, as far as like regional leagues, I have never been. I've been to like one or two lands in America, in like Chicago and also in California, and they've always been very. You get like one master player and then like a lot of low diamonds and maybe a challenger or two.
Sure. Yes, I don't imagine state v state would work just because of how widely spread the population is in America. You basically have most of it in California and then some of it on the coasts on the east, particularly in like New York area, and then you have like Florida. But like everywhere else is pretty sparsely populated, so I don't imagine a state thing would work. The collegiate system is like the closest thing you guys have to National League, no?
Yeah.
I think, and that's kind of the way forward, like talking to some teams, is that they will either partner with like some high schools or some universities just to see, so that they have like a program running where they can send players to there. It's like, oh, you guys should get interested in league and play league, guys, and have a club and have fun. That's kind of like the equivalent of what China does, where they buy gaming cafes, right, and sponsor gaming cafes, like looking for players that way.
Does it come with all the kids inside? Is that like? Is it like you buy the cafe? Like, is it whatever kids are inside? Lock the doors.
It's just about like encouraging the population to be excited about like the possibility of playing professionally, right? Like that's the idea. So
sure. I mean, one thing, obviously, that's the elephant in the room on any discussion like this is that every big esport now tries to claim there is. I mean, they've even got that like mad term like path to pro, where they want to really make you believe that. Forget, like, listen, we're having a discussion right now, which has already talked about how for years and years, even though they could have developed people who were like, you know, in the context of all League of Legends players, a hair below a pro player. Now they're going beyond that and trying to sell you on the idea that the guy who's just sat at home, a complete noob, can go like, how do I improve to be in gold? And then how do I get from gold to 100 thieves? It's like, spoiler, you can't, but okay, here's some bullshit reason why you can. Maybe you become the best in your school, and then the best in your state, and then you go to university. And it's like, this is already a sci-fi premise, because League hasn't existed for like 50 years, has it? Like, how would that all be built up? Like, if anything, if you tie this to the EU angle, the reason the EU angle sort of works is because those leagues already existed. Like, everyone knows, obviously, famously, in the UK, you had the ESL Premier League or whatever it was called, that was always around, you know, and some players have made their way out of. So really, all you're trying to do in EU is make some sort of a bridge between Challenger / Pro and the leagues that already exist. You're not, in NA, you've got this LCS at the top, and then you're trying to do some sort of mad system to make that go down to connect to the grassroots, which seems impossible as far as I can tell.
Well, yeah, like the biggest barrier to this is going to be that you don't have the kind of talent scout that you would need to pick up these people in schools, in state. Do you have any idea how big that operation would have to be? And yet we've only seen one coach demonstrably in the LCS that has been willing to talk to their clueless 80-year-old owner and say, no, I know the real shit. Ignore everything you've heard. Bench Jensen, bench Sneaky, bench Smoothie. Give me golden glue, and I swear to you will make top 4 at Worlds. I stake my career on it, and you will not lose all branding for it, and you won't look like an idiot. Also make a video about it. Only one guy has been confident enough in his own analysis to say that in the NALCS, and he's not even North American. But you think that you can actually get confident talent scouts who will tell these kids, go to this college instead. You college, spend all this money on this kid will win you this collegiate scene. No, I haven't watched everyone in all 50 states, but I know enough about League. No, you're not going to be able to make an operation on that scale for almost a decade at this rate. Like, that's not happening.
Well, the obvious solution, I've just figured it out. Like, I've just taken all the disparate parts that you guys have placed out there. Here's what you do. If you're a Western team, you've got to pay a very, very high premium for the best talent scout of all time. His name is LS. And here's the thing. He's been telling you inadvertently for years, he can spot the best players without nameplates. Or what if they just didn't even have a name because they're nobody? So you put him in there and he will find the next Whippo, the next Crown, all these players that he definitely didn't find mostly when they were, again, a hair below pro, and it was like, which of these 10 players will make it? I picked the right one. No, he is really out there, like, you know, obviously he's sending with a whole road show, it's like fucking Britain's Got Talent or something, you know, he's bringing people on, there's people telling him, you know, like, you've made the wrong decision, LS, you'll regret this one day when I'm at the top of the LCS. He's like, dude, next. And then obviously you'd need some sort of a sympathetic host as well to like lie. Like, I notice on all those shows that whoever the woman is basically is the one who's allowed to just go, I hope you really make it. I say maybe. And then the others just go, we're all agreeing to say no, yeah. Right. So I don't know who that would be in this scenario. Like, I don't know, Shocks or something. She can go out there, oh, great job. Yeah, you're really good. And then the others are just like, nah, you're trash. Get out.
I mean, but theoretically, like, you should be able to, you don't have to go to all these different places to scout because they are theoretically all playing on, like, the same NA Challenger ladder, sure. Right? In theory, right? So it's not like you have to physically go to these places and be like, oh, I'm watching all of these state leagues. So that there is that option. But the problem is that another thing is that people in NA hate the ladder, right? Like, they also hate the NA ladder and say that, but the NA ladder is pointless. Like, anyone who gets challenger on that is like garbage and would lose to
Game
anyone.
Of Thrones, so finger memes.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, like, that's the biggest problem, I think, also is just with scouting like that.
I mean, you said challenger, and then you gave her the thumbs up, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is that the problem is that you will have to find someone confident enough for every university to make that work, and you can't even find anybody North American born in the in the LCS who is willing to do that. But you think that you can fill the LCS with people like this, then fill the Academy League with people like this, then start filling every university in the country with people like this. For the system to actually work, you need to be able to fill every university of one person like this. It doesn't matter if everybody is in one place for all of them to eye up and say, okay, this guy is good or not. There aren't enough people to say this guy is good or not to spread out in the entire country. That doesn't exist. That's why it will take a decade.
Sure.
It's not a question. It's not logistics in terms of we have to go to each school. You need to have one guy in each university who's willing to say to these guys in all of these different schools, okay, you need to come to our university. You have the best league program I know because I scouted all this talents myself. Then say to the college, trust me, all these talents are good enough. No one's confident enough to say that in the LCS yet. But we think we'll find one person to say that in each university. That won't happen. So if you do pop up this system, it will not give good returns for so long that people will lose faith in the system itself. That's why it's not feasible right now.
So, I mean, the system definitely wouldn't work if the aim of it was to do what you're saying right now, or what Thorin was saying about like the top reaching down, right? Like the LCS trying to reach down and connect to these grassroots organizations. Sure. But the way that I see it working is play versus encourages more competition at a high school level. People are treating it like a varsity sport instead of playing lacrosse. Maybe they're playing League of Legends, right? And it's not really, the universities don't have to have talent scouts to ask them to come to the university. I would consider myself one of the people that you're talking about that don't exist, because I was at university and I didn't ask. I had no resources to recruit people to my college, right? Like my college had undergrad population of 6,000, and probably like 60 of those people play League of Legends. But like I was able to work with what I had and then like compete collegiately and do all of that. And from that experience, I was able to then go to LCS and be like, hey, this is my worth as a coach, or this is my worth as like, this is how I work with people. This is how I identify talent. And
one thing you missed there, though, Croissant, I've got to just bring this up now. This isn't even a meme, though. Is to be fair, you yourself were found by LS.
Yeah, I was gonna say
the irony of this is
ridiculous. But there are other people who have come up. Like I haven't worked personally with him, and I don't know specifically like what he does or what value he adds. But like obviously, Invert from FlyQuest, came from collegiate
and mail to brand. You're not going to find
again,
build a brand for
like his primary experience again is from collegiate. Like it's good to have like the ability to say that my experience is collegiate. But what he said is, I think, like the bigger point, like earlier, which is that we have an interesting thing in the US where PC gaming is not really the thing that people do. Like if they want to they'd rather do console gaming as kind of an extracurricular thing, you know, but if you're encouraging League of Legends, if you're considering it a varsity sport at your high school, then more people are going to look at this like, okay, my parents won't throw me out of the house if I decide to do this as my extracurricular activity, you know? So.
Yeah.
Just got to get more cynical. Like if you join the club that plays League of Legends every week, at the end we give you like a gift card to play Fortnite or some shit for 2 hours. And they're like,
This is the thing though, Thorin. Like you're hitting the nail on the head here. This is the thing that like. Croissant. The thing is that, there are like potentially even like 1,000 people at university or something that could be playing League, and that you do have a roster to choose from there. But the problem and the reason why it will not be an equal thing to the National League system, unless you do have all of these scouts in place everywhere that are constantly looking the ladder to bring people in, is because currently in the National League system, if you're a team of 5 players in Challenger and you realize you guys are a good fit for each other, you now start looking for an org. People aren't going to be able to reach across like that and then look for the same university. You need talent scouts to fulfill that, to tell the university it's worth getting all these kids from everywhere on the basis of League. You need that, because otherwise, yes, you are going to be beholden to the people who've come to your university primarily for other things, just happen to be good at League. And then you are still flipping. You will have individual talents coming up like this, but they're going to have to really prove it. And stuff, particularly in roles like support and jungle where they aren't as flashy. Whoa. Okay. Just lag out there.
So
did we all just disconnect, or was it I think we got most of it. I think it just
did I get the jungle support point in?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the thing is that even before you get to that point, you have to get to a point where you have resources to even recruit players like that. Like a couple of universities have sort of tried it where it's like, okay, we have scholarships for a league, but they've been like really small. Like I wouldn't necessarily consider going to that school over a school with a better program in a profession I would do normally, based on the scholarship that they're offering. So, like that becomes a hurdle even before. So just like encouraging interest in league, encouraging like that sort of visibility for educators. Like even my teacher calls me Zion Spartan, et cetera, et cetera. Is I think a good place to be for NA, just because we don't have something that isn't collegiate or isn't high school. It's not like we can suddenly start up. Like TCS is basically the closest thing we'll get to national leagues, sadly. Yeah. So yeah.
And Croissant, like, I assure you are very good, but you came up because you were on Reddit a lot and were really popular because of that. Like, that really helped you. And the sad fact is that even though you can be as good as you want, you will still be very obscure unless you know how to promote yourself. And you and Invert LOL were both able to do that. Invert's guides that were written for the Score Esports were on Reddit all the time. That's how you guys got shoutouts. That's how you guys got your jobs. At the end of the day, you can do whatever you want, but I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing. Because you did need to do that back in the day. You didn't have to do that once they implemented coaches and you could just qualify via Challengers Series. Okay. But back in the day before that, you had to do that. And now we're going back into that thing where instead of just being our role that you need to get a branding for, all roles need a branding for.
But based on the fact we've outlined like the premise and how that they currently operate, I want to do this for both aspects. So for Academy at the moment, when I look at the teams that have been announced, obviously only half the rosters are even on there. Some, like you have like one person or none even for TSM, you know. Yeah. For the Academy aspect, there are a lot of players I haven't seen before, and a lot of players I haven't even seen in Challenger. Like if they played in Challenger, they must have been lower down and they obviously weren't in any of the good teams. Do you think, if you had to predict, that we actually... I mean, we've basically listed a lot of the problems and restrictions that mean these people probably won't get into the LCS teams. Will we actually see talents come through? Or will the Licorishes and the Zizels of the world just be the exceptions to the rule, and these people who don't make it through will just be stuck at this level?
I'm worried that you'll start seeing dead roles in Europe, like there are dead roles in North America, and there are dead roles in North America. Mid is a dead role in North America that you are fighting the biggest uphill battle of your life to get NA players in for. Partly because of now, and the reason why I call it a dead role is that loads of these mid lane players have now swapped to jungle and to support. They've swapped to these roles because they perceive them as weaker, but bigger. They perceive it as impossible to qualify for the LCS as North American mid. Pobelta is holding on by a hair's breadth right now as the only North American mid laner. And I worry that when I saw the immediate reaction to grabbing support players as import talent in Europe, I really strongly worry that we'll start seeing support identified as a dead role in Europe. Norskeren should not be struggling to find a team. That was absolutely absurd to me. And I had to hit up people immediately to say, okay, drop everything. Norskeren is definitely your guy, by the way. I don't know what you're hearing, but he is definitely your guy. But it should never have been a struggle for Norskeren to find a team. And there are players like Labrov, for example, who I think are absolutely going to be big LEC players one day if they get the chance. But I don't see them getting the chance anymore. I do see players get disincentivized when they see a role become dead in the LEC. They can't brute force their way up anymore. Jack Troll brute forced his way up with Jizuki and with Mini Trupax. You don't have that option now.
I think it's worth noting that for a really long time the reputation was just that like European support is the one role that's like bad, you know, it's kind of crap. But this year, for whatever reason, a lot of really cool rookies and really promising rookies became LCS age, like 17. Just turned, you know, that. So this should have been the year where we see suddenly, yes, okay, Europe does have like a ton of support talent as well. But instead, 4 teams imported. So that was kind of a weird thing for me because previous year that didn't really happen.
Okay.
I also worry about Expect, for example, coming in over, for example, Arome and Yopper. Arome and Yopper look insanely strong, and yet the only person who's betting on talent on the EU West server when it comes to top lane is TSM, which is Thorin's favorite subject, and I don't want it to turn to a TSM thing. But it was amazing to me that we didn't see like an influx of rookies like I expected that we would see in the top lane. Well, Shemek, Arome, Yopper, even Ice Beasto's doing well. But Broken Blade was the only one that got picked up, and he got picked up by a North American team who has gone for the European branding for a while right now, actually, I do have to say. And they've definitely realized that they made mistakes last year. I don't know if anything happened with Haunts, and maybe you guys can clarify. But it was amazing to me that European teams immediately weren't going for players like this.
Okay. But what about this then? So to go the other way then, with what they have with the national leagues and what they're trying to build now that we're going to have franchising in Europe, does that mean, Veteran, that if all this talent's playing and they're getting experience and we're even having, like, they get to play against, in theory, like, semi-pro teams themselves when they're on the way up, does that, surely in your world where you always hype up, like, the potential of Europe and how all these new talents can come through and get all these rookies, surely you should now be making some mad prediction of, like, it's going to just hyper-accelerate and now EU is just going to completely pull away from NA completely, right?
We're going to hyper accelerate and pull away from North America completely. I actually think Europe's going to get worse over time with the way that the current model is. And I worry about this a lot, but it's all going to come down to how much viewership the next EU Masters gets, given that all of these teams are now having to put their academy teams in national league slots. So I'm hoping that makes it viable to grab a lot of the better players that are consistent performers in the EU Masters, but we're going to have to wait to see that.
I think it's also telling, like, that, okay, so we ragged on NA a bit for not being able to integrate academy teams into the LCS as much, or to give as much experience to the academy players to play with the LCS or to even talk to their LCS counterparts. But you have another barrier in the new European system, which is that the residency rule, right? Where you do have to have, like, the players living in the country that they're competing in. So unless you are competing in the German league, right, you can't really even have that option of pulling the player in unless you're, like, willing to fly him. And it's kind of a weird setup in that sense. So I can kind of see a lot of LEC teams not getting that much out of having an academy, or not willing to invest that much into their academy side.
The ironic thing is that the only teams that I know of that are planning to do what was alluded to earlier, actually just scrim academy teams perpetually and even mix it up as an actual 10-man roster, are the very, very new teams that are owned by very, very young people. But they're also doing it to an extent that I know, like, it will probably end up being announced really soon. But for example, one team is legitimately planning to fly from their home country to Berlin every single week to maintain this 10-man roster.
Is this not Origin that you're talking about, right?
No, I'm not talking about them right now. And I'm not going to, and that is not a confirmation nor denial that Origin are also going to do it, just in case they have or have not. But there are multiple teams that are planning to do this. And that kind of thing will actually be damaging over time. And it strikes me as something that will sound really, really good. And as probably
damaging
does sound.
The travel aspect, you mean?
The travel aspect killed Gambit. Like, it killed one of the most world-class European rosters of all time. But you think that 5 rookie kids and five veteran players are going to be able to get through this and come out a really strong team at the end of it. That's absolutely delusional. But if you were to post on Reddit that you're taking infrastructure so seriously that you're doing a full-on 10-man roster that's all mixed up, and you have all of these arrangements planned for it, and you throw it like that you've just had a sincere level of planning behind it, then you as an organization look like you are like the everything everyone wanted from franchising. It strikes me as delusional, though. Like, the one instance that the multiple instances that I can think of where teams are actually planning to do this is just going to be damaging over time. We've already seen the results of this. No one's come in. Okay.
I mean, I think that there are some signs that this can be feasible, especially if you, like, my bigger concern is that if you're doing this and it doesn't work out, that you can rotate a certain role, right? you can't really, like, this guy on the academy or maybe even this guy on the LEC team eventually is not on the same level as his counterpart, right? So you're just going to end up with that player playing almost every game, and you can't do the rotation. Theoretically, if you could do the rotation, then you could leave, like, some guys at home to rest for a week. And so the taxing, like, element of travel and missing scrims is not as huge because you have players that you can flex in and flex out. But I just don't see that being something that, like, as ambitious as it is, you immediately go in and, okay, well, we can't have this player play, right? He's just not as good as this point where all the other players are actually, like, losing valuable practice time because of the way that this is set up. We can't have him really flex, so that player is going to probably get a lot more fatigued relative to the other players. This could be a bigger issue going forward. So I don't know. Like, I think it's ambitious and it's okay. Nice to think about, but it's hard. The other thing is that China obviously are kind of doing that, where they fly like every week. Everyone has a home base in a different city, and a lot of these teams are still really competitive, obviously, as we saw internationally and at Worlds. But it's definitely a challenge, and I don't see it being immediately successful at the very least. So
like were these teams already flying around in Summer Split?
It's because of the franchise aspect, right?
In the LPL, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was just a few teams, though, right? Wasn't it? Not the entire league?
It started out with like 4 teams in spring, and then in summer it was like half of the league. So.
Okay.
Wow.
I like the way veteran, like Kelsey won't know the reference from sports, but like she essentially is already hypothesizing like some sort of Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger thing where it's like you just use the youth player when it's like the game that doesn't matter, you know, and you're like, I'm going to rest my starters for this one. And then the league's like, you must play a certain amount of starters in the game, you know, we need the viewership. Like she's accidentally backdoored away into a real thing from UK soccer, actually.
Sure.
So.
Here's something, actually, because I feel like I should bring this up. One reaction to this kind of thing as well, that Academy Orgs are going for these like 10-man roster kind of setups where there's going to be a lot of travel time. A lot of players have actually, like a lot of the stronger players, like Rome, Yopper, other variants in jungle and mid, for example, are all thinking, it's not as attractive an offer as if I went to Mad Lions, for example. Like a lot of these players, a lot of these academy orgs make themselves less competitive.
Said this was his reason. He said he went to Turkey is because he said since he only had offers to be like a basically challenger player. He said, "What would the point be? Why not I go to Turkey, try and get into MSI? You know, that's like he implied this is what a lot of pros would think if they had the choice."
Sure. So, but by eliminating the academy league itself, you've basically made it so all you're thinking about if you're not in the LEC is getting to the finals of EU Masters and going for the whole thing. And a lot of these academy rosters and the potential experience you could get that rightfully these European players realize they're not actually guaranteed to get by scrimming of an LEC team or by being able to talk to an LEC player, like they couldn't do that already, like these guys don't have each other added on their friends list. It's actually mitigated by the fact that if they just get to the finals of the EU Masters, they're going to cash in and they're going to get a lot of viewership, and it's much better to just look for a stronger roster there. So I definitely have to bring this up because there's going to be a prevailing theory that, for example, G2's academy team is going to stomp Spain. That's just not going to happen. Like Mad Lions team that I've heard of looks really strong right now. And you're going to see a lot of these hyped up rookies and rookies, for example, that I've tweeted about not appearing on academy orgs because it's just simply not worth to them. But they have this secondary option and North American players don't. And that's what I feel like is the big difference between and the big advantage that having the ERLs gives Europe.
I do think that it's like Mad Lions is a brand in their own right in Spain, right? So they definitely like being kind of the star on that org, if as opposed to being like the guy who's going to be in the corner when the G2 main team does content, could be appealing in its own right. So.
Okay, because that's the part that I guess is the confusing part. Is like, okay, explain this to me, Veteran. What is the premise behind why it would be good to have the academy team in the same league that you're also claiming develops talent? Is it just the viewership angle? Is that the only thing? Like the idea that maybe having G2 brings some viewership?
Yeah, so I don't actually know why they made it as a you have to have it sort of thing. Like, I think initially they were thinking we're just going to imitate the North American thing because, honestly, the actual secondary academy league was on the table for the longest time. And people were like, we're not going to do this. This makes no sense. And I think it's legitimately a case that Riot just don't want to say, okay, we're scrapping the entire thing, and they want to do some sort of variation to it. Riot are now taking a hold of all of the academy leagues, though, and they have a much better justification to do this if they are protecting the LEC's investment. Because if you have a franchise team, you're forced to have a national league team, but the national league in itself goes poorly, not because your team is doing badly, but because it's being managed by, for example, ESL, who still owe me money from 5 years ago, then that's going to be a reason not to go into franchising, and that's going to be a point against Riot in a scenario where Riot doesn't have control. So now Riot is justified in taking much more of a control of these previously independent leagues. And I think we all know that Riot really enjoy taking control of things that are getting popular in their game that they don't have control over.
Okay. What about this then? Is there an angle that works here whereby, we've seen with TSM, admittedly it was the Turkish league, it wasn't like actually EU challenge or anything, but will this just mean that NA, for example, considers just importing players that have shown promise but aren't on the LCS teams but are somehow making it in the European system?
Yeah, Broken Blade's over there right now, isn't he? Like, if you want to join the North American, that continues. I mean, this is a trend that's always been there. You're more likely to join North American team if you play on the US than you are if you play on North America. Like, it's been this way for years.
FlyQuest just signed one of the junglers from EU Masters, for example. So, yeah.
Okay.
So,
the hope is that the same thing will occur for European teams, and that European orgs don't just look to Korea all the time. That's the hope. The hope is that they just accept that if Larson looks really strong in the last EU Masters, that means that he will be really strong if we were to pick him up now. Of course, Larson is like a side thing here because he actually is on a team, but he can't play this split because he has school and stuff, and he wants to finish it, and bully for him for that. But go on.
I mean, theoretically, obviously, there are fewer spots that these guys can join in NA anyway, but it's just there are cases where EU orgs or NA orgs will think, okay, like some of the most successful players in NALCS have been European, so we'll look at Europe first, and then we'll look at NA. Whereas you don't have that same mindset in some European orgs. Like, I do think that there are a lot of European orgs versus some NA orgs, and this is changing a bit because obviously the number of new imports has gone down as people are valuing communication more. But in terms of EU, I do think that historically there have been more orgs that value like communication relative to the best Korean player that just won Worlds. And part of that is also like kind of to an extent, historically, I think EU orgs have had less money, so they've had to sell some kind of narrative to their players, and the players kind of buy into it. So I do think that is helpful. But yeah, it works like that.
Okay. Do you think that in EU then, because it's just such an alien setup in terms of these national leagues, etc., and the EU Masters, does that mean that in EU there will be even less likelihood that someone brings a player from the academy team in the context of like, we're just going to try this guy for the top team, like he gets to be a sub or something along those lines? Is that just not going to happen because of the logistics and stuff?
I don't think it's going to be a logistical thing, but I do think that you're more likely to see a player who was on Mad Lions or who was on NIP, if NIP were to actually secure another really strong roster, or any of these top contenders for EU Master over their own academy team, because you're not actually incentivized to go to the academy team if you are one of these lower tier players. So I do think that you are going to end up seeing, you will end up seeing like a Rome, Yop, and Shemek eventually in the LCS. But when you do, they're not going to be coming in from the academy rosters. They're going to be coming in from the from another ERL league. Well, one of those names is actually on an academy roster, but still, point stands.
Is the issue here then that by doing like two things at once, they've kind of ended up with a shit compromise as opposed to do one or the other? Either make it like it's all about like EU Master type competitions, you know, and it's just like a really bigger version of Challenger, or go purely the National League except LEC rather.
I mean, I think it's a really good. The really good thing you get out of this is that you just immediately boost the viewership of the regional leagues, and I do think there's a lot of value in that. Even if the LEC teams themselves, the LEC Academy teams themselves, aren't necessarily going to be the strongest teams in those leagues, and these are now leagues that Riot is in control of. So, bully for everyone involved, except for if you are forced to make an academy team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't expect the LEC teams themselves to be the ones like competing for Mad Lions. Potentially wants to build like a super Spanish league team, right? Like they're not going to compete for those players because there's not a lot of incentive. Like they don't get a lot out of it, at least from them on paper. But they're going to be buying like Fnatic just bought the Mad Lions mid laner, right? Like they're going to continue doing stuff like that. So
okay, I mean, I'll just make like a half joke that someone might take seriously, which is like what you should do is in a kind of like idiocracy style, you should just add a mad component where whoever wins EU Masters just directly qualifies to Worlds, and therefore it's all like you hype up the reason why you would all do it, because it's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you're all going for that one golden ticket, and all the little poor kids are out there like, maybe I'll get it this time. You just get to go straight to Worlds. There you go, Riot, take that one. TSM's probably already writing that one down. I wonder if we can implement this somehow. Like, if you win the collegiate league, you get to be on TSM. There we go. Oh, Monty wasn't there. Scrap that.
Yeah.
Scrap that idea. Scrap that idea.
I hope I don't have to list why that would actually be unfeasible.
It's actually interesting though, because something that's going on in some of the Asian regions, like Korea, China, Taiwan, Macau, they are doing international collegiate stuff. So if the collegiate team is successful and does well, they can go to like the international collegiate thing against like the Korean and all these others. So I think that's kind of cool. Right, okay. A lot of the governments are putting money into that. So like if some of the American collegiate teams could get involved in that, I think that could be like good for the NA scene.
But please invite EU Master Champions to that, please.
And that's the European as well. Yeah. Like I'm sure there are EU universities with teams and stuff as well. So
see, the downside there is Kelsey was thinking like very logically and trying to make like a real good case. But the first thing I thought there was like, brilliant, let's just make it like we've wound the clock back on league. So what'll happen is we'll have this North American collegiate league, and then we'll fly over the best Korean collegiate team, have them stomp them completely, like when Blaze first came over, we're just shitting down TSM's throat. Then we'll bring over the best European ones. That'll be like, CLGEU or something like this. This is what we'll do. I think you've cracked it there. We'll start league over again. It was a mistake. We've got to go back, guys. We've got to go back to the beginning.
Go back to the beginning. Yeah, I mean, theoretically though, that creates like international visibility. That creates incentives, some incentives for the universities and stuff like this, and for stuff along those lines.
I will say though, the one thing that I do feel bad for, because I'm just going to go ahead and preempt this, is I feel really bad for the Chinese or Korean international collegiate team who lose, but they're just students, and then they get told to kill themselves as well. Like I at least understand where it's like SK Telecom does. They are like built to win worlds. Like these guys are just collegiate students. It's not their fault they lost to China, and in doing so, inadvertently like triggered years of country tension between each other.
Like the worst part is because like the Taiwanese and the mainland Chinese collegiate scene is actually like kind of integrated. So just imagine.
Jesus Christ! Yeah,
messed up that can get. Yeah.
So. You know what? That's one of those areas where I've learned from past experience. Like, obviously, I can say all this shit, but I've just learned if you bring certain guests on the show, like, don't even lead them into that territory. Like, you are just leading them into a minefield. Like, I remember saying to someone one time, as like a naive thing, not on a show, luckily. I remember saying to someone naively who was a Chinese, like, from the Chinese region, not someone famous. I once said to them, like, but why would the LPL have people from Taiwan listed as like that's their region if they believe it's the same country. And then he literally just started saying like, let's not get even into this. Like, it's just not even worth going. And I was like, oh, fair enough. Okay, I've learned. I'll back right off that one. You know, I'll leave my journalistic instincts at the door on that one. So, okay. What about this then? Most of this was pretty good because it was more like people don't have to know the players. And let's face it, everyone watches the show is not going to know fucking any of the players who play in these leagues, probably. So here's the question I have. Are there players who already, you've alluded to a couple, are already basically in position to go into the LCS from these academy teams from EU, what do you call them, national leagues? Is it the case that, what was the other part thing? Oh, what about this? Are there is it actually even vaguely near the level where, for example, you maybe will get some washed up old pros who will go down to that level and that will give it some visibility? Is this actually already happening?
Oh, where's Vander going to go now? Who knows? Go on. I want to hear the anything first. I've talked for ages.
Yeah, because I mean, I do think that that's a concern, right? And this is always something that I've kind of had in the back of my head is like, what do pros do who effectively like dropped out of school to do this? Like, do they get a chance to go back to university? And so in my head, it was more feasible for like the high school to be. This is where a lot of pros are kind of like getting experience coming up, and then for the college and university level to be more like, okay, this is where retired pros go to find a different alternative career path, and they can get scholarships there, things like that. So,
I mean, by the way, when you consider all of us here have experience with actual real League of Legends pros, and if people know, I always tell people from the outside, like most people who are pro gamers in the West, I mean, to be fair, in Korea and China as well, have like massive arrested development for logical reasons. They spent the last like 5 years with 14 hours behind a PC and didn't really go out much. So obviously they haven't like developed in the same way maturity wise that the others have. Well, if you think it's that bad with like a 20-year-old guy, God bless whoever's going to go and try and teach some 16-year-olds how to play League of Legends and correctly understand like lane priority and like and why they have to play a bad matchup and how, you know, like, you know, if you can do it, you're a legend, but I wouldn't recommend it.
I mean, I've had some friends who are like, obviously, because I was a nerd growing up, but I knew some kids who literally like would only go to school for the after school club. Like they would power through the bullying all day, and then their after school club was like where they could talk about anime or whatever and be happy. You know, like I knew kids like that in high school. So theoretically, you could make like a League of Legends club a sort of salvation for the people like Bjergsen who would otherwise not go to school. You know,
it's okay, but guys, because you heard at the beginning, she did add that caveat that she had some friends, so she wasn't talking about herself in any way. There. That was none of that hit home. Okay, none of that. Listen, you're perfect. The camouflage was perfect there. I don't know how she pulled it off. I didn't even suspect it when she said it, you know. Especially with the way she specifically had to say anime club. She didn't even just say like, you know, the like young astronomers club or, you know, whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean, I was part of the science club at one point. No, I did, yeah, stuff like that happens. So.
Okay, fair enough. Croissant, do you have any more topics for this episode? You're the sort of guy who could come up with something. This is probably what it's like when you're in OpTic, isn't it? It's like, well, we tried letting the French guy paint himself a different colour and tell us what Koreans could do. Do you know anything? And you were like, have you ever seen the movie Moneyball, man? Come on, Costa, have you got any topic along these lines?
I have not watched that, by the way. But one thing that we kind of skipped over, and we don't really have to go back into, is just like, so I don't know how many LEC rosters. I like looked on the Riot website and I looked for maybe how many of these teams, like as veterans said, G2 will be in Spain, Fnatic will be here, etc. I don't know how much of that information is decided yet or public, but like, yeah, the geographical reports, limitations and constraints. Sorry, am I cutting out?
No. I believe most of the things that you were saying here are sort of vaguely known just because it's through reports. Like it's not officially confirmed.
Yeah.
I think it's just the case. Yeah.
Sure. I'm only saying stuff that's already being on Reddit.
Yeah, and the geographical constraints is what I'm most interested in, because if a team, like you said, has 10 players in Germany or in Spain, and they're trying to make the flight every weekend, and it's going to take like I've heard that some of the flights, let's say from like Denmark, would be 45 minutes, or I don't know, like Origin's flights.
Yes.
But let's say their flight's a little bit longer. If you have that 10-man roster, then yeah, you can do what the NALCS teams do. What we did, like, do we want to play Alarim? Then we just literally drive him from the apartment to LCS, and he can play instead of Dokla, or vice versa. But a lot of those things, like if you have your main team, LEC team, in Berlin, and then you have 5 other players playing in National League, obviously that gets a lot more difficult to fly that person over. And also, like, so I don't think paying the flight ticket is that expensive, right? If you want to bring in your academy mid laner from Spain over to your Berlin facility, that's fine. But then you need to find someone to replace to play in the academy, right? Or play in that National League, because you're not going to fly over your already starting mid laner back into Spain and banish them to the Shadow Realm, right? And so
that would be the ultimate iniquity, wouldn't it? It's just like, right, you know what? You're not only bench, but here's your EasyJet flight. You're going off to Spain now, mate. Fucking hell.
It's like having Jensen.
Oh wow!
Having Jensen play some games online, and not like in a totally different studio or a different like state in North America is like fine for a week, and then he can jump right back in. So I wasn't totally sure how that was going to work out, and I don't know if you have any information on that, but like it just reminds me of how Arrow got into League of Legends and how he got into the pro scene in LCK. And Thorin, you mentioned this a little bit about how in Korea they had a lot of like different scrims, and they could just pull in like solo queue players. But the way that Arrow got his shot was a player on Xenix or something. I forgot if it was Bang. I'm pretty sure it was Bang, and he was just like, I played against Arrow in solo queue, and I want to play against him a little bit more, and I want you to bring him in-house. And so like Arrow at the time was a freshman or a sophomore in like not mechanical engineering, but something in college, right? He's like 18, 19 already. He's pretty old, but because geographically, like he's in Seoul or he's like very nearby, he just takes a train ride over, and he's in the house getting paid like minimum wage or whatever, scrimming, like learning about like LCK culture or how the Korean leagues are. And like that's an advantage that I'm sure you guys have talked about in shows in the past, but something that North America will never have. We'll never be able to fly in someone from like Florida or whatever. And this is another thing, like, okay, how much of this information is public? A lot of the academy teams, most of the academy teams in 2018 were on site. They would be like, you'd have your academy team, like TSM has 2 houses. They have the main team house. They have academy team house. It's like a 9-minute Uber ride, right? OpTic didn't have their academy team in Santa Monica in the spring, but they had them in Dallas in their own facility. But they ended up bringing all 5 players from there, so we had 10 players on site for Summer Split in 2018, and that's the only system that I've known. And as far as I know, continuing with that. But I did hear that a lot of teams. Initially, I heard that a lot of teams in the NALCS teams were just scaling down everything that they'd done for academy because it wasn't profitable. Like, just get some, as we talked about, older talent that goes down into like maybe talent that we have seen for a couple of years in North America or in LCS, now just trying to play in academy and make their way back up into LCS. But if they're remote, then they have to pay for their own cost of living to stay in Santa Monica, or they could live in like Texas or, Montana, whatever. In that case, I actually I think the most important thing for North American talent is for us to find a way to enable remote people who are playing remotely on academy teams, because that's going to be how the Challenger Series worked in the past, right? Like, I mean, optimally, you'd have your 5 Challenger players in a house, and you'd be renting that house out for like a couple of $1,000s, like $2,000 a month, and like your total costs into this Challenger team would not be that high. But the way that these academy teams are working, they're not even considering having them in a house in like a cheaper area. They're just literally considering having all 5 of the players living in their own homes or doing whatever and playing these scrims. And that gets really difficult because, as you said, a lot of these people from the ages of 16 to 22, whatever, have arrested development. Like they, like if you don't monitor their diets or you don't monitor their fitness, etc., and they're just showing up for scrims and then afterwards watching anime for like 6 hours, how is that going to be healthy for these people, and is it going to be sustainable over time? So,
sure.
I mean, like, yeah, that would be, if I want to try a player for OpTic Academy, like the nice thing about Academy is the financial stability for people who are a hair below LCS level, right? Their ability to have a career and still, like, you know, have social lives also in Santa Monica, whatever. But my dream would be to just be able to like send whatever the player needs. If I see a player like Fake God studying in Santa Barbara or you know, someplace in the United States, and for him to come into like two scrim blocks a week or something and see, like, does this guy have the potential? Like, I think that if I could see how they interact with the rest of my academy team, even if they're not on site, that I would be able to make the call of whether or not to bring that player on site. But right now, like, we just have very distinct and very separate systems of LCS, academy, and then solo queue, and then you got scouting grounds, right? And then you have TCS. But none of these things have, like, I can't, as a coach, it's very difficult for me to sell management on, hey, I want to try out Cat Evolved on the academy team, right? So,
yeah, sure. I think the big underlining thing is that, like, these guys do have money that they're willing to spend, right? That's the obvious thing. But what they're spending it on is something that is going to give them, in their minds, like, better return right now, and they're not really thinking of like longer run return on investment, because I would think that, like, being able to fly a guy in who is doing like super well on collegiate for a weekend or something and try him out would be something that, like, is a higher investment that you want to have on your academy team. But because of the way that the infrastructure is in NA in terms of like building up the next level, you're never going to be to a point where you're no longer shelling out on high immediate costs with like immediate return on just like small return on investment. You're never going to kind of even that out. You're never going to have to stop spending money on importing Bjergsen and Arrow or whoever. You're never going to have to stop spending money on that because you aren't willing to spend the money now on the thing that's like less glamorous that you know right away isn't necessarily going to give you like branding return or isn't going to win you worlds this year, right? Like, people need to be thinking more long term in that if they actually want to get to a point where LCS, it has a decent return on investment and you're not just like in the red over one player all the time, you know? So,
see, the bizarre thing is, you would actually think in League of Legends, if people were looking at the bigger picture, that they would put way more emphasis on trying to scout players than they do. Because actually, League of Legends as a game is very unique in esports, in that you do get people who are legit rookies, who are just as good as the best players and veteran players who've been in that league for years. That is not the case in like CSGO and games. It's like, if you go and look in the top 10 teams in CSGO or something, you might see like one or two people who started. And by the way, even then, they probably started 3 years ago and it's just they only got to the pro level now. You know, like, there's nobody coming in who's totally unknown and complete. Like, that's very rare. That's like, they would be complete exceptions to the rule. Whereas the turnover, as Veteran always points out, of European players who then become not only good players, but go to Worlds even and are good players, it's ridiculous. So actually, if people weren't, I mean, this just shows basically how, at this point in time, it's almost like Riot would have to like force the fucking LCS teams to play these players, because they give them every opportunity, they give them every chance, they added extra things, and it doesn't matter what they do, every single team ultimately, in terms of like their overall approach, says, I will just take the short-term approach again and just take what I have now over gambling for something in the future.
Because it's very unlikely that if you don't go to Worlds, but you have gambled on the rookie roster, like look at Griffin, for example, they didn't go to Worlds and they gambled on an all-rookie roster, it's very unlikely that you have something else to capitalize on. Whereas if I got double lift and I didn't go to Worlds, I now send one of those two to go do interviews or something, or do a feature of my team at Worlds, because I I have spent the money on very popular players. I still have ways to capitalize and give a good return on investment. And it's very hard to get good return on investment the way the LCS and the LEC is set up. That's why you had stuff like Croissant's team trying to get the fuck out of here. And they are very right to try to do so because they're not making money. It is the right decision by these orgs, by the way, to go for stronger branded players than it is to go for genuine rookie talent, because the game, from their perspective, is no longer about competitivity. They need to make this ROI. It is actually the right choice for them to do these things that I fundamentally don't like, because the players of Europe who work very, very hard to do what they do will suffer for it. And the game as a spectator sport will suffer for it, but you will have lots of brand personalities on point. So there's a trade-off for you guys.
I wasn't sure if this is what you were saying, but I just wanted to clarify that I'm not on management. I don't know everything that happened on OpTic, but I'm fairly sure that they weren't trying to get out of LCS.
I think you've taken that a bit too literally there, but yeah, it was just a shot. It was a random shot in the dark.
It was I do also want to say that, like, yeah, for immediate term, but if you can get to a point where your organization, like, this is the ideal world where your organization has like the best talent development part in LCS, like that in itself is a branding standpoint, and that in itself will save you money like in the next 2 to 3 years, right, compared to constantly buying big brands. So I think that you have to kind of frame it that way if you're talking to upper management, or if you're talking to anything like this. Of course, like, people, like Croissant mentioned, is that a lot of people didn't get any kind of return. Like, not everyone was Cloud9, where they were able to flex like certain players into the main roster, and then that made their roster like more long-term competitive. Like, not everyone was that team. A lot of organizations didn't get any return whatsoever. So they're immediately downscaling because they think 1 year shows that, okay, 1 year shows that there isn't talent in NA, and it just like proves and confirms like all of their suspicions that they had beforehand. Like, imagine if the Cloud9 experiment hadn't worked, like, it would have been an absolute disaster for Academy. So
like, name a player, Kelsey, that you think is like legitimately strong, that can absolutely like go to Worlds if you were to put him on a roster right now. Just name a rookie talent. Probably gonna name one of your own, I just realized. But
it's supposed to be in NA Academy, yeah.
Just name a rookie talent. Yeah, just any player. Just name one.
Duo King.
Duo King. You're gonna name Duo King? Okay. I don't know.
I was gonna take Wiggly as yours, Croissant.
Yeah, I mean, well, like, Wiggly is no longer NA Academy anyway, but. Like, I think officially he's
for the purposes of just name one player that you think could legitimately do really well in the LEC and go to Worlds if he was given a chance right now.
In the LCS, like, I mean, I think that any player, there are a lot of I think that Brandini is a player that, for example,
I was going to say Brandini. Yeah.
Brandini is a player that, like, without mentioning any of mine, like, Brandini is a player who's like really solid, but like obviously he has like a few like stage issues, but that, like, over time I think could make him like Worlds.
Would you be willing to go to NateDOhDoubleG and stake your job on that? If he replaced Sunday with Brandini right now, you'll have the kind of result Cloud9 had. You laugh at that, but that's
no. I'm not laughing because, like,
would you be willing to do that?
Like, I'm willing to advocate for any players that I think are really, really strong. Like, I'm willing.
But would you be willing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Croissant. Would you be willing to say replace Rainova with Wiggly, and we can actually make it? And this is not something that you'll regret. Would you be willing to say that? I'm
always willing to make those decisions or go to management with those claims, and I have claimed that in the past. And for example, when Reaper first did his benching of the C9 players, I was completely behind it, and I was like, yes, just from what I know, like, I haven't worked with these players directly, but from what I hear and from what I know and from the scrims that I've seen of all 10 of these players, I would have made the exact same decision.
Okay, so
and
here is
at the time, like, I could confirm it.
Yeah. So here is the thing. We have 2 analysts right now who would actually be willing to say that, but we just got, and I was going to have to say as a hypothetical, but thank God you actually said that. What the problem is that not every org owner is someone like Jack who is actually willing to do this. So a lot of people are probably going to be saying that all of the points that I've made are null and void because head coaches are in charge. The coaches are in charge of the roster. It doesn't work out like that. Even if these people were willing to stake their jobs on it, they won't necessarily be listened to. It's because the owners legitimately do have a lot of power, and the managers legitimately do have a vested interest in not taking this risk. So even if you do start ending up with a lot of people like Reaped who are fully willing to go to their org and say, no, you don't need Peanut, I got Wiggly for you right here. He's way cheaper, and honest to God, his ceiling is all that we need to get to the World Championships and all to get branding. They are still disincentivized to say that, and they do have the final say. I was going to have to hypothetically say that, so I'm glad that you brought that up, Croissant. But yeah, so long as the franchising system is set up this way, there will always be this ultimate barrier, unless these org owners suddenly start watching games and get confident in their own opinion as a talent scout. That's literally the only way that it's going to change. Or you have people like Jack who are willing to look into the future, but Jack can take that risk because Jack, unlike everyone else, had the single most successful year of any organization in esports history, winning absolutely everything, that even if his League of Legends team did completely fucking tank, it wouldn't really matter to Cloud9 as a whole right now. They had so much power at that point they could afford to take that risk. Very few orgs take that risk. 100 Thieves, basically League of Legends was their absolute biggest starting point. TSM could maybe do this kind of thing, and look, they're willing to go with Broken Blade, but they're still not willing to go with North American talent. So it will all come down to the franchising system. The owners will still have the final say, and even if you do suddenly replace all of these coaches, people who are confident enough in their opinion, that doesn't necessarily mean things will change because of the way the system is.
I mean, for the record, this is a small sample size. Like it was an unfortunate room to gauge that on because you do have 2 people here who are just like ridiculously optimistic, like Ned Stark-esque characters who are like, by honor, I would have to say to my owner to play the player, and they'd probably be fired for it. So there you go.
I did push, like, all the players that I've signed, like, I do think that could absolutely, like, by end of year, be players that, like, 100 Thieves main roster says, okay, we want to take your player to Worlds. Like, I think absolutely every single one of the players that we've signed has that possibility. So, and I would definitely stake that, like, so, for sure. I do think but that's, like you said, that is the big issue, is that just convincing like organizations and people around that NA has talent, I think is like one of those obstacles. And the starting point is giving them a platform to express that, like giving the players like better platforms to express that they're like really talented and that they can be options, like viable options for LCS over a bunch of imports. Is the next spot that has to be taken. And so a lot of the production and stuff like this has to be worked on a bit. So.
Okay. Should we leave it at that? Is there any final angle to this that we need to explore?
Well, I would say that there are downsides to this system, right? Like, so not enough to dissuade teams like Liquid and 100 Thieves to continue following a formula that gave them success in 2018, which is having proven talent and also often international talent. But the risk that I do see is, like, even if you get a lot of like, financially, does the cost of bank salary actually is it made up for by his media presence if 100 Thieves doesn't make top 2 or top 3? Is his like interviews, his branding, his streaming? You'd have to do all the numbers on that kind of stuff. But I do know that in certain cases, like, you don't actually make up that. You do not recoup your investment on certain players, and in addition, it looks a lot worse for your team, and looks a lot worse for teams like Liquid and TSM and 100 Thieves if you get someone who is supposed to be such a proven talent like Bang and you don't succeed, because that just makes your management, that makes your coaching staff, all your talent development, it makes it look like people who can't really succeed who can't succeed even with proven talent, right? Whereas if C9 failed last year, there would have been a lot of, I mean, there was a lot of criticism for them, right? But it would have been like, I mean, that is as far as these players can go. That is their ceiling. Whereas, the team reputation, I think, is often at stake when you do take on certain players. And even though it's not as big of an issue for Liquid and for 100 Thieves, Golden Guardians, for example, right? Like Froggen's brand is, if Froggen fails, will people see that as a failing of him or of Golden Guardians or of both? That's like a consideration that I think like there's a lot of narratives and a lot of negative narratives that can unfold from choices that management and choices that coaching staffs have made to build certain rosters. Whereas like OpTic, people are already down on us. Like there is like anything above 9th is a success technically for OpTic right now, right? And that's also like the constraints. All of this is under the constraints of the investors, which is what often fans aren't able to see, right? Like I could fairly accurately name like what the budgets were for all 10 of the LCS teams, and I think people would be surprised. But yeah, like for example, people think that people were thinking that OpTic had given up and were just trying to coast like 2 more splits and then get out of the league entirely. But then as soon as Crown, Dardoch, Meteos were picked up, it's like, oh, well, they must have like pulled out more money out of their ass. Well, like not necessarily. If you look into it a little bit more, you think about it, like maybe people just smurfed and were able to get a lot of value out of, you went to the dollar store and you put together something that actually looks really good. So I think
I would say it's more like you go to the supermarket at the end of the day before they're about to close, and all like the pastries and the cakes are all on offer for like £1 for all of them instead of like €5. Like
and they look pretty good.
That would be my analogy.
And I mean, they
look good Crown, if you're starving at that point in time. You're right. Yeah,
like Crown, I don't look at and think, oh man, this is like a huge high dollar get. Like that you had to shell out all of the salary for. So
exactly, that's the problem. But the real bakery's closed already. There's only the gas station at that point in time. So it's like, fucking made it all right.
I looked at that and thought OpTic have realised that no matter what they do, they're probably not going to become a high-tier team, so they made sure they got good streamers. Because everyone's going to tune into Crown's stream. People are already tuning into Crown's stream. Everybody was tuning into our stream. People were already tuning into our stream. And they're going to be on cheap at the end of the year. So yeah, maybe we won't get to the World Championships, but people will still click on the
streaming for like 2 years. People will only averages like 80 to 100 viewers.
People will still be clicking on the Travis interview with Crown, for example, and people will want to know how Crown is doing in North America. And
just for the lols, you've got Meteos and Dardoch, so it's like, let's just have some drama there.
Oh, Dardoch, yes.
Let's just set that up.
Like to get to his, I'll be really brief on this point, but for example, to get to your Froggen analogy, for example, say that it doesn't work out for Froggen, it will bring up a lot of negative press, for example.
Sure.
Right? And I agree with that. And it also look negative on Golden Guardian's coaching staff and stuff. But you know what is going to happen after that? Froggen's interview of Travis that ends up with like 300,000 views, where he talks about the issues of in Golden Guardians and all of this stuff. So the org doesn't actually give a shit if you look bad because you took a proven talent or not, because people are still talking about the failure of that talent. No one gives a fuck if some random North American rookie had a bad split. But if Froggen has a bad split, people still care, and that still nets views, and that's still on brand. That still matters. That matters far more. So it's actually still
Echo Fox doesn't like their brand currently,
I kind of want to say like the value of certain streaming numbers and stuff doesn't necessarily have like immediate monetary effect. So you're at a point where like how much does I think orgs almost put too much stock into brand. Like even the value that it gives is not that high. Like if they are putting so much stock into brand, like people will be talking about you, but how much does that actually translate for them into revenue at this point in time? Versus being able to save some money on some players who are not great, like immediately on paper, but might end up being the next Licorice. Like how much return are they actually getting? Because I'm willing to bet that if that is what they're staking their kind of hiring decision on is brand alone, then they're not getting the return that they want. So I don't know.
I mean, yeah, we know that people aren't getting the return that they want, but they're getting more of a return than they otherwise would get, is all my pointers. Like, people orgs in the LCS are still not making that much money. They're making more money than they would do if they gambled on the rookie and it failed, and if they gambled on Froggen, whose videos are getting like 800k viewers when they're highlight videos. Like, yeah, that's a much lower risk investment.
The marginal difference is like really small. Like, I think that to an extent, if they are having this mentality, it's a bit overtuned, and to them it's more like, right now I think a lot of orgs are thinking in terms of, the way that I would see it is that a lot of orgs, not any org in particular obviously, but like some orgs are thinking that we're not going to get a monetary return this year. Like, most likely we're not going to get a monetary return, but the idea is that if we'll get players to Worlds and we'll like do okay at Worlds, and then maybe we can attract like better players next year for less money, and then from that we can like start to build more sustainable brands. So they're equating like almost branding to skill in and of itself, rather than just like, because I think if they're thinking, okay, this player has a ton of like Twitter followers, then he must be really good, because they just don't have scouting. Like, the scouting infrastructure is bad at a point as well. So I do also think that is a factor. So, because like, to me, orgs have to be looking at the returns based on the streaming numbers, based on like merchandising sales, and thinking to themselves like, at this point, if we care about branding, just buying the LCK winner isn't that good, right? Like, he's probably not even streaming as much as some of our NA players.
Yeah, but he will look good on the portfolio that you show to potential sponsorships. That's the thing. Like, if you're competing against someone else for a sponsor that's looking to get into LCS, then you are going to win out if you have Froggen versus if you have an absolute nobody.
But you will win out on that. And even like a lot of the sponsors that orgs want to get don't even know. Like, they don't necessarily even know. Like, they'll look at the Twitter amounts, but they're not coming in based on Twitter amounts. Like, a lot of these sponsors are not. It's really weird. Like, the fact that this is what people are willing to. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that it's like mind-boggling to me that this is what orgs are willing to like sell the farm.
This is the limiting factor.
When it hasn't worked, you know, like, to me, it hasn't worked after so many years. So if they care about short run returns, then why are they still doing this? Like, it's so weird to me. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you're not seeing all the football teams you thought you were going to see in the LEC, because yes, it's people have figured out now that it's just going to be really difficult to attract non-endemics no matter what. It's just going to be brutally difficult. And in the North American, so obviously no one can confirm anything, but obviously we've all read the articles where they're talking about orgs that have actually been trying to get out of the LCS because they've realized no matter what they do. And when I look at what OpTic are doing, I look at this as we need to at least make something this year, for the love of God. And they're going to have more of a chance of doing it with that than anything else. But I do agree with Kelsey. Ultimately, they're probably not going to make that much. They're probably not even going to turn a profit. But that's all due to Riot's model. It's still better for them to go for this than to go for anything else.
Like, see, I don't actually even agree that it is. Like, this is the thing, though, because like, they will think that way, but I don't agree with them. Like, if that makes sense, just in terms of pure
I know what you're
cost benefit analysis. I don't even agree with it that this should be their bottom line. So
they would just have to start trusting you on the level that Jack now knows he can trust Weeped. But again, Jack could only take that risk because he had the most single successful year of any org in history. Like, he had so much to fall back on, it was not anywhere near a risk to him. But you guys can't just expect your owners to immediately become League of Legends experts and agree with you, or just immediately start trusting you with their entire brand. Like, that's unfeasible. That is unfeasible.
Plus, to be fair, actually, one part that you didn't explicitly say there, Veteran, which is a key aspect, is it's also unfair to compare like Jack, Reginald, people who either were pro players or have watched League of Legends many years, to a guy who's a new owner who, I mean, his job is to delegate to some degree, but at the same time, if he just hears this is a guy who's never done anything and he's not even famous, that's going to be a hard sell, you know.
It already paid off Jack once with the first Cloud9 roster. That's definitely a big point. Jack's already seen that just investing in the top 10 NA solo queue talent does work out, because that's all the initial Cloud9 roster was.
And also, in fairness, if the orgs aren't like trusting their Croissant, they should be trusting like their head coaches. So like it's possible that they're still doing that, and the head coach has like a lot of faith in the rosters that they built like with these imports, and that's probably good. Like that's still a good owner. Like if you've hired a head coach and your head coach is like doing this, then this is the model that you're going forward with. So that there's not necessarily anything wrong with that either. Like
I'm definitely not denying that there are just head coaches that legitimately believe taking in imports is better or worse. And the initial, like the first half of this video, I'm basically arguing against that mentality and the fact that there is no longer a way for people like Jizuki to just power through like they have been doing. There's no longer a way to power through those inherent biases. But I'm saying even if all head coaches weren't like that, and God knows that that's not the case, I still don't really agree that it's feasible that owners will trust them with their entire brand. I don't agree it's feasible for the same restrictions that both of you have, or at least Croissant has admittedly met. Like those will still be in place until the owners understand League, and you can't feasibly expect owners to start understanding League, and you guys will always be limited in power as a result. And it will be a better move from the owner's perspective, and I can understand that perspective in this system, to go for on brand, especially when they're bleeding money.
By the way, just as a sort of parting message, shout out to everyone who really roared hard on that angle that, you know, the EULCS would be like Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund and stuff. No, instead, when we finally get franchising, what do we have? XL Esports. If you know anything about UK Esports, by the way, that is a literal joke. I thought people
I've just been waiting. I've been waiting for this platform, this Thorin rant, so please go ahead.
I thought people were trolling when they told me XL Esports was getting in, because here's I'm not exaggerating right now. People know I'm an elitist in every game. I don't follow anything below the top leagues. Like, so in EU, to the extent I watch LCS, I obviously don't watch Challenger at all. In NA, don't watch Academy at all. Don't even watch smaller regions, obviously. Same in every game, right? Well, as a result, in games like Counter-Strike that have some UK basis, you know, I don't even watch the UK teams because the UK teams aren't good in Counter-Strike, right? So the only time I have ever, in my 17 years in esports, heard of XL Esports is when I went to work for Gfinity, which I only did because, this is like last year, because they actually had the money to pay like the proper day rate of an analyst. But then all we were doing was we were analysing, like literally no joke, like the teams that are like fucking 75th best in the world or something like that, you know, like terrible teams, and teams like XL were in there. So when I heard that org is in the LCS, I was like, right, that whole angle of like the Overwatch League and the NALCS of like, listen, it's going to be really strict, this whole franchise, I think it's going to be real tough to get through. You got to show us a proven business model. It's like, that must have just gone out the fucking window when it came to like XL. It's like, they were literally just the fat girl at the bar when it's like fucking last call. It's like, well, don't want to go home tonight, do I? I can't do that again. So there we go. Welcome to the LEC. Now, no one who works for a team, respond to that if you want to keep your job. I'm allowed to say that shit. I'm Thorin. That's the end of the episode. Thanks, everyone. This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, Gardner Wilson, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, James Harding, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, Daniel Yordanov, and as always, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my upcoming content? Perhaps you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA. Do you want to see some teasers? See who's going to be the next guest on one of my shows? Maybe you want to take part in an esports discussion with me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.